It's taken some time, but I finally got this figured out. Discoveries that I thought were separate codes I now see are all connected and all part of one message. I learned about the idea of God and Vere from Alexander Waugh. In time, I realized there's a message that's a trinity: God, Vere, and Rosy Cross. I found it in the King James Bible, Shakespeare's First Folio, and in Shakespeare Sonnets, where it's encoded 3 times in 3 different places. In the Sonnets, it starts on the cover. In his video, Where is Shakespeare Really Buried?, Waugh explains how a Kairos symbol can be drawn, which touches the letter G for God and letters spelling the name de Vere, D-E-V-E-R-E. The vertical line goes from the letter P in the name Shakespeare's, which is R or Rho in Greek, to the first letter T in the byline. Later, I figured out that this stood for the Rosy Cross initials Rho Tau. This Kairos symbol lets us know the message we're looking for: God, Vere, Rosy Cross. Waugh discovered that the 17 letters of the byline are an anagram. The 2 T's are different from each other. The second T is in a swash font, and when you put it with the letter G, which is in the same style font, you get GT, which is an abbreviation for the word God. Waugh also explains the ancient etymology of the letter T and how its shape resembles the head of an ox. Oxen were sacrificed throughout the ancient world, including by the Israelites. In addition to the letter T being in the shape of an ox head, it's also in the shape of a cross, the symbol of Jesus' sacrifice. So there's a link between the ox, the cross, and the shape of the letter T. Even the first syllable of the word Taurus, the bull, begins with the word tau, T-A-U, which is the Greek word for T. Waugh points out that when the first letter T in the byline is replaced by the word ox, and the byline's unscrambled, it reads, by God and Oxford Earl. To this, I'm adding that there are 17 letters in the byline, and there are also 3 dots or points circled in red. Some of the Shakespeare codes I found use gematria, where letters are equal to numbers. The codes are based on the 23-letter Latin alphabet, and applying that here, 17's equal to the letter R and 3's equal to C. Just like the letters Rho Tau, R-C are also initials for Rosy Cross. 17 letters, 3 points. R-C. It's that simple. That's the second God, Vere, and Rosy Cross message. There's the one found by drawing the Kairos symbol and one found here in the byline. The initials GT stand for God. Oxford Earl is Vere, and the 17 letters and 3 points of the byline are equal to the letters R and C. Incredibly, the third message is also found here in the byline. In Old English text, the lowercase letters for S and F were almost identical. The S, known as a medial or long S, is printed with only half of the crossbar on its left side. You can see here with the word self the similarity between S and F. Sometimes, though, lowercase f was used for the letter S. This is taken from Shakespeare's or Edward de Vere's Venus and Adonis. As you can see, the word glasses is spelled G-L-A-F-S-E-S. It doesn't change the meaning of the word, it's still glasses. I'm just showing that printers sometimes use the same character for F and S. When we unscramble the byline again, we get T, G-L'd, Rosy T, and B and R. The letter T is in the shape of a cross, a symbol for Jesus or God. The word eld, E-L-D, as in elder, means old. Add the letter G, it spells gold. Like I showed earlier, the F was sometimes used for the letter S, so we have Rosy followed by T or cross. Together the words and R spell andare, which in Italian means to go. In Spanish, to go is ir spelled I-R. Also in Spanish, the letters B and V are pronounced exactly the same. B in dare or bir is vir, V-I-R. Altogether, this translates to God, Gold, Rosy Cross, Vere. The Golden and Rosy Cross was the name of the secret society who said to have first met in 1570, following the excommunication of Queen Elizabeth. So 3 times on the cover of the sonnets we have the message God, Vere, and Rosy Cross, once with the Cairo symbol and twice in the byline. Notice that it's Edward de Vere's name 3 times. De Vere, Oxford Earl, and Vere. It's not Bacon or Marlowe or anyone else who people claim was William Shakespeare. Only Edward de Vere is referenced, and God and the Rosicrucians. The next set of 3 codes begins on the cover and uses the initials TT or double tau. The initials TT are printed in Shakespeare Sonnets 3 times, the cover, the dedication, and at the beginning of Sonnet 122. Many believe they stand for the publisher Thomas Thorpe, but it makes no sense that his initials would be buried several pages into the work, at the beginning of some random sonnet. And it's not a printing mistake. Over the last 4 centuries, most people who read the sonnets have probably passed over these initials, not giving them a second thought. Those who've examined the sonnets looking for clues as to authorship may have noticed that each letter is different from the other, but as far as I know, no one's been able to figure them all out. To do this, you have to understand that the initials aren't just 2 T's. As Wah pointed out, the 2 T's on the cover are in a different font. The crossbars on the 2 T's in the dedication have been shortened on their left sides, but the bar on the first T bends sharply downward. This doesn't happen with the second T. At a glance, these are supposed to be 2 T's, but they're obviously something different and different from each other. And for no apparent reason, Sonnet 122 begins with 2 T's. The letters are clearly not the same, and it's the only sonnet where something like this happens. People can see that the T's are different, and yet most think that doesn't mean anything. But ever since I began working with the sonnets, I've been asking myself, why are each set of these initials printed with 2 T's that don't match? I could excuse this maybe if it happened once, but 3 times these letters appear together, and with each example the first T is different from the second. Now I know why. We already saw that GT is an abbreviation for God. God can be symbolized by a cross, which is in the shape of a T. Both the letter G and the letter T stand for God and are interchangeable. With the initials, if we replace the first T with the G, then both letters of the initials GT are in the same swash font, spelling the abbreviation for God. So we have the initials for 2 T's and GT, and hidden in these letters is a third set. In Monos Hieroglyphica, John Dee shows how letters can be orientated using V's and L's to make 2 different kinds of crosses, an X and a T. Letters can be manipulated to make new ones. Notice how with an L or V, or a Roman numeral 50 or 5, you can orientate the letters and spell the word lux, meaning light. In my last video, I show how in the William Astley edition of the sonnets, there's a dot or point printed over the word times in Sonnet 58, and beneath the word eclipses on the other side of the page in Sonnet 60. They're part of another set of messages that I'll show later in the video. Now when the page is held up to a light, the dots line up next to each other. Since the decoded message is out of darkness, which again I'll explain later, I believe the 2 dots symbolize the moon separating from the sun, revealing light, light coming forth from darkness. The reason why I'm showing you this now is because there are times in the sonnets when light helps reveal something. There's nothing printed on the other side of the sonnet's cover. If you hold it up to a light, the initials TT are now orientated to appear as the letters P and T. The Latin letter P is the same as the Greek letter R or Rho. Again, these are the Rosy Cross initials Rho Tau. If you have a facsimile of the sonnets or just print out a copy of the cover, hold it up to a light and you'll see what I mean. Now before you disregard what I've just shown, check this out. After I realized that the letters were also Rho Tau and began working on the video, I went online to look at other printings of the initials and found this John Wright copy, printed in the same year as the William Aspley edition. The second T has been fully closed, making it a reversed Rho or Greek letter R. I don't know if this is how it originally appeared when this particular copy was printed, or if somebody added the ink to make the crossbar of the T fully into a Greek letter R, but I was able to figure out that these letters are also Rho Tau before I found this on the internet. It's clear somebody at some point in time had the same idea. Think about that. Alright, the first set of 3 messages are found on the cover, once with the Chi-Rho symbol and twice in the byline: God, Vere, and Rosy Cross. With the initials we have GT for God and revealed through light Rho Tau for Rosy Cross. This means that TT stands for Vere. To fit the pattern which was provided to us on the cover, this is the only conclusion we can make. I don't think that God, Rosy Cross, and Thomas Thorpe makes any sense, but I know some who might be watching this are still shaking their heads, so let's keep going. Okay, so following the cover, the next set of initials are on the dedication page. What's going on here is that the 2 T's are printed to also resemble a G and a T. The crossbars of both T's have been shortened, but the beginning of the first T bends downward, making it look even shorter so as to simulate the Greek letter G or gamma. Again, GT or gamma tau are initials for God. If you can't see that the initials are different, pause the video. Look at the left T. See how the crossbar is shortened and bends sharply downward. And look at the right T. Yes, the letters are different. Okay, so looking at the initials one way, they're 2 T's. Noticing the difference in the way they're printed, they can be read as GT or gamma tau. And that's not all. Look again and you'll see that the first letter is also a lowercase r, RT for Rosy Cross. For me, this was one of those oh wow moments of realization when I could see the letters spelling RT. If you can't see it, pause the video, relax, and look until it becomes obvious. Personally, I thought this was pretty amazing. Because of the way the letters have been printed, they can be read not only as 2 T's, but also gamma tau and RT for God and Rosy Cross. And like with the initials on the cover, we now know that the 2 T's on the dedication page stand for Vere, because that's the message: God, Vere, and Rosy Cross. After the cover and dedication, we continue going left to right. The third set of double tau or 2 T initials appear in the sonnets themselves at the beginning of Sonnet 122. Now we're looking at the third double tau, the 2 T's beginning Sonnet 122. Just like with the cover, if we turn the page over and hold it up to a light, the letters are reversed, and this is what we see. The way everything's been typeset, nothing appears behind these 2 letters on the other side of the page, so they're clearly visible. Rosicrucians often encode things right to left like Hebrew, In Monas Hieroglyphica, John Dee refers to what he calls the primary alphabets of the three languages, Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. If we read these letters right to left like Hebrew or the Rosicrucian way, but write them down like Greek or Latin, left to right, we have this. Now take a look at the large letter. It's a lowercase r followed by T. If you can't see it, pause the screen until you do. So beginning Sonnet 122, there are two T's for Vere, holding these same characters up to a light, reading them right to left, but writing them down left to right. Again, we have the Rosy Cross initials RT. To find God, we keep holding the two T's up to a light. Notice how when the larger character is reversed like that, it looks like a lowercase r, but it's also a Greek gamma or letter G. Just like with the initials on the cover and dedication, these characters are printed to resemble more than one letter. Now watch what happens. This time, when we read the letters right to left, we're going to keep going as if we're reading Hebrew. Right to left, the letters spelled GT for God. It's read like this because it's the beginning of the third and last set of codes, which I'll show you in a moment. The two T's beginning Sonnet 122, when they're held up to a light, are also gamma tau and RT. If you have a copy of the sonnets, hold the page up to a light and you'll see what I mean. Each of the double tau initials on the cover, the dedication, and beginning Sonnet 122 are printed in a way so they can also be read as GT for God and RT for Rosy Cross. And to complete the message, which is spelled out to us on the cover, God, de Vere, Rosy Cross, it means that the two T's stand for Vere. Alright, we went from the cover to the dedication and ended up here at Sonnet 122, basically going in the direction of Latin and Greek, left to right. Beginning with the letters GT for God that we found, we're going to start reading the third set of codes right to left, like Hebrew. Notice there's a dot or point following the sonnet number. This is only one of 4 sonnet numbers printed with a dot. Also, in the William Aspley edition, the second 2 in 122 is scored with a vertical line. You can see it more clearly in black and white on the right side. Beginning with Sonnet 122, reading right to left, Sonnet number 18, the catchword or, Sonnet number 10, also printed as a catchword, and Sonnet number 9 are all printed with dots. In Monas Hieroglyphica, John Dee explains he uses the Kabbalistic methods of Gematria, Notaricon, and Zeruf, which I'll explain when we get to them. With Gematria, letters have numerical values, and when these sonnet numbers, printed with dots, are converted to letters, we get the first message in the next set of codes. The message also uses Dee's primary alphabets of the 3 languages, Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. The code is read right to left. The catchword or serves as a fulcrum and is shared by both sets of numbers. The first part's in Hebrew, and when the numbers are transcribed right to left, 122 is 221 and 18 is 81. The codes use the 23-letter Latin alphabet, but as you can see, there are no letters for 221 or 81. The key to unlocking it is knowing that printers of the day use the same character for the letter I and the Roman numeral 1. To translate the numbers into their Gematria values, simply write down 221 as 22 and the letter I, and 81 as 8 and the letter I. Applying Gematria, translating the numbers to letters, 22 is equal to Y and 8 is equal to H. So 22I, 8I translates to yihi, yihi followed by the catchword or. Yihi or is Hebrew and means fiat lux, or let there be light, God's first command at the beginning of Genesis. The second part of the code is in Greek. Continuing right to left, the catchword or is spelled RO, followed by 10 and 9. The gematria value of 10 is equal to K and 9 is equal to I. The Greek part of the message is Rho Ki. Ki is the Greek letter X spelled CHI. It's spelled KI here for a reason I'll explain later. RX or Rho Ki are initials for Rosy Cross. As you can see, the letter X in Greek spelled CHI is pronounced KI, the way it's spelled in the sonnet number code. And to confirm that KI or key is a cross, we simply add 10 equal to K and 9 equal to I, which totals 19. 19 is equal to the letter T or tau, which is also a cross. This gives us the letters RT or Rho tau. Whether it's read Rho Ki or Rho tau, the letters spell Rosy Cross initials. Beginning with the letters for God at the start of Sonnet 122, these are the numbers translated with gematria. Read right to left, it's GT, Yihi or Rho Ki or Rho tau. The KI and T does not spell Kit or stand for Christopher Marlowe. I'm just including the T so anyone who might think Ki would not or should not be spelled KI can see that those two letters, equivalent to 10 and 9, add to 19, which is equal to T. These letters spell out chapter 1, verse 3 of Genesis. GT, Yihi or Rho Ki or Rho tau translates to, God said, let there be light, and there was light. What this means is that Edward de Vere is the Yihi or let there be light part of the code, which was God's first command. Jesus calls John the Baptist a burning and shining light, and there are some who refer to John as the morning star, which is another name for Venus, also known as the light bringer, the first light before the rising sun. And just how John the Baptist made the way for Jesus, Edward de Vere is the light bringer who makes the way for the Rosy Cross, which illuminates the world. I did my best to explain this idea in video 54, and to save time here, I ask that you watch that video if you'd like to know more about it. This exact same message is reflected in the 1611 King James Bible on the opening pages of Genesis. After God says, let there be light, there are 17 lines to the end of the column, followed by 40 lines to the end of the page. 1740 is Edward de Vere's cipher. The page ends with the word over with a comma serving as an accent above the O. An O with an accent is of, and in French and other languages, Vere is de Vere. Beginning the next page, following the word over or de Vere, there are 17 words followed by the verse number 19. 17 is equal to R and 19 is equal to T. God said, let there be light, 1740 de Vere, Rosy Cross. Which is the same message when the marked sonnet numbers are translated and read right to left. God said, let there be light, and there was light, is God, Vere, and Rosy Cross. On a side note, the message Yihi or proves that the 23-letter Latin alphabet is used for codes in the sonnets. As you can see, the letter Y is equal to 22. If we were using the 24-letter Latin alphabet, which some people claim they use, the 22nd letter would be X, and this would spell Xihior, which is wrong. It's clear that 23 letters work for sonnet codes, and as far as I'm concerned, all of the Shakespeare works, including the King James Bible. Next we use Noteriacon, where we take the first letter of each marked sonnet to form a new word. Sonnet 9 begins with the letter I. The number for Sonnet 10 appears as a catchword at the end of the page and is printed with a point, and then Sonnet 10 begins with an F. Sonnet 18 begins with an S, and Sonnet 122 with the letter T. We continue using the marked catchword OR, so altogether there are 6 letters, IF, OR, ST. This is why, with the previous code, key was spelled KI, which is 2 letters, instead of CHI, which is 3. The 6 letters of this code are taken from the first letters of the 4 sonnets printed with dots, and the 2 letters of the catchword OR. If the previous code spelled key with 3 letters instead of 2, it would add 1 more sonnet number, resulting in 7 letters here. We then apply Zerif, which is rearranging letters to make new words like an anagram. One spelling we get is F Rosy T, which is an abbreviated form of Fratris Rosicrucis, or Brothers of the Rosy Cross. Obviously, this is the Rosy Cross part of the message. Applying Zerif again, we get 4 T's, which is Latin and can mean strong, powerful, or brave. It's also a homophone of 4 T's, or 4T, which can be written as 4-letter T's. I explain how Edward de Vere is the 4th T, or 4T, in video 54. I apologize for not explaining it all again here, but I'm trying to save time. So 4 T's, or 4T, stands for Vere. Applying Zerif a third and final time, we spell first O. O is the letter omega, which means last. First omega means first and last, which is a name used by God in both the Old and New Testaments. When I realized the third anagram has to be a word for God, it was immediately apparent that the letters spell first omega. It was the same with 4 T's and F Rosy T. If you disagree and know of another word for God that uses only these 6 letters, please leave a comment. The marked sonnet numbers and the first letters that begin those sonnets conceal the message God, Vere, and Rosy Cross. And like the marked sonnet numbers, this is also Genesis 1:3. God, or the first and last, Edward de Vere, the 4th T, or 4T, as the light bringer, and the Brothers of the Rosy Cross, illuminating the world. We have one more of these codes to find, which is actually the 9th God, Vere, and Rosy Cross message. We've been reading through the sonnets right to left. We used numbers for the first code, which were gematria values, and letters for the second code, which led to anagrams. Now it's time to look at some words. When we get to the pages with sonnets 58 and 60, there are 3 dots that are out of place. One of the dots is printed over and on the left side of the letter S in the word times. I believe this is a Rosicrucian clue to ignore the letter beneath the dot and begin reading everything to the left of it. When we do, the letters spell E-M-I-T, emit. Emit means to send forth, as in light or a sound. It comes from the Latin emittere, meaning to send out, and is an assimilated form of ex, meaning out of or out from. This dot only appears in the William Aspley edition of the sonnets and does not appear in the John Wright copy. Also in the Aspley edition and not in the Wright, when we turn the page in Sonnet 60, there's a dot beneath the word eclipses, which means darkness. The dot beneath eclipses is printed next to and in between the letters P and T on their right sides. Reading to the left of the dot, just like we did with the word times, the letter P is the same character as the Greek letter R or rho. Beneath the rho, the letter T stands for tau. The position of the point gives us the Greek letters rho tau. So we have out of darkness and Rosy Cross. Since let there be light and 4 T's from the other codes are references to Vere being a light bringer, I think we can conclude that out of darkness, which is about light coming forth, is also referring to Vere. So that's Vere and Rosy Cross. God is also found in Sonnet 60 on the side of the page with times, or emit. The last line of the page is the sentence, nativity once in the main of light, and it ends with a period that's not supposed to be there. It's at the beginning of what's supposed to be the second 4-line stanza. Nativity once in the main of light crawls to maturity, wherewith being crowned, etc. However, the added punctuation interrupts the stanza, ending the line after the word light. With the punctuation, it reads, nativity once in the main of light, crawls to maturity, and so on. That period after light doesn't make any sense. Notice also this interrupt is roughly twice the size of the punctuation from the previous line. Obviously, it's not supposed to be here. The reason why it's here is because this line is the third part of the message. Nativity once in the main of light is of course referring to Jesus, or God's nativity. This portrait shows light from the Star of Bethlehem shining down upon the manger. And that's the third and final God, Vere, and Rosy Cross message from the third set of codes, making 9 messages total. Like the other codes, it also reflects Genesis 1:3. My interpretation of the message is that it's telling us who's responsible for the work. The work comes from God. It's written by Edward de Vere, and the Rosicrucian Brotherhood puts it out into the world. There's also the idea that God has sent someone to prepare the way. God said, let there be light, which is Edward de Vere, and there was light, the Rosy Cross lighting up the world. That's everything. 9 codes, 3 sets of 3, all with the same message. It begins on the cover, spelled out once by the Kairos symbol and twice in the byline. God, Vere, and Rosy Cross. Again, there's no reference to another writer, only Edward de Vere. From the cover, it goes left to right to the dedication and ends with Sonnet 122. Each page has a set of double tau initials which can also be read as initials for Rosy Cross and God. And since the message is God, Vere, and Rosy Cross, like we saw 3 times on the cover, it means that the 2 T's have to stand for Vere, because Vere is the only name that completes the sequence. In another video, I'll show other examples where 2 T's are used to suggest they stand for Edward de Vere. From Sonnet 122, the codes go back the other way, right to left. On these pages, we get 3 more sets of codes using dots or points that people think are printing errors, which they absolutely are not. There are the sonnet numbers 9, 10, 18, 122, and the catchword or, which result in gematria values. The first letters of each of these marked sonnets resulting in anagrams, found by applying the Kabbalistic methods of Notariakon and Ziruf, mentioned by John D. in Monos Hieroglyphica, and the 3 dots that appear out of place on the pages with sonnets 58 and 60. The dots and anagrams lead to 3 more messages, each of which reflect the Bible verse Genesis 1:3. In short, we get the message God, Vere, and Rosy Cross on the cover. It's carried into the sonnets by the double tau initials. From there we discover that God, Vere, and Rosy Cross is the same as God said, let there be light, and there was light. 3 sets of 3 codes each, for a total of 9 God, Vere, and Rosy Cross messages. 9 may have been chosen because, in Roman numerals, 9 is written IX, letters that stand for Jesus Christos. Also, messages found in 3s adhere to the tria sunt omnia principle, all things in 3, which we think is a way to let us know that the codes are true. Everything I've explained in this video provides the explanation for why each letter of the initials is different from the other, why these 2 T initials are found beginning Sonnet 122, and the reason for the unnecessary dots that people think are printing errors. The fact that we can derive the message God, Vere, and Rosy Cross 9 times from these subtleties is extraordinary and clearly shows design. You can't tell me that a Cairo symbol can be drawn randomly on the cover of a page and have it spell out God, De Vere, and Ro Tau, and then have the byline spell out the same thing twice, or that the initials on the dedication page aren't shaped differently, or that Thomas Thorpe's initials would be at the beginning of a sonnet, which happens to have a vertical line through one of the sonnet numbers, a dot, and I showed this in the last video, 2 commas printed next to each other, or that a bunch of random numbers with dots happen to be equal to letters that lead to the same message as the Cairo symbol, the byline, and the initials that are shaped differently. I don't claim that every single thing I post is definitely a code, but what I just covered in this video is, and I challenge anyone to take another text and replicate what I've shown here. I know I didn't explain too much about why I think Edward de Vere is referred to as the 4th T, but if you're interested, I talk about it more in the last video, number 54. Part of this same code I just went over is in that video, but compared to this one, it's incomplete. So you can hear what I have to say about the 4th T in that video, but the complete code is here. Also in the sonnets is the dedication grid of cross-shaped rebuses with information about Edward de Vere, references to Jesus or God, and there's an offset OT Rosy Cross. Alexander Waugh explains the grid and shows what he found in his video Where is Shakespeare Really Buried? I do the same and go over the rebuses I found in video 47. And even though 2 T's stand for Vere, what words are the T's abbreviations for? Why is Edward de Vere being referred to as 2T when he's also known as 4T? I'll be looking into that in a future video. If you enjoyed this video, found it interesting or informative, please hit a thumbs up and hit the notification button if you want to know when the next one's posted. Thanks to Petter Amundsen, Alan Green, Chris Johnson, Jack, Ron Raffel, Patrick Jennings, and as always to Alexander Waugh for his advice and support. And thank you for watching.
He was Shakespeare.